The Funhouse Corpse. One of the most unsettling urban legends is the tale of the Funhouse Corpse. The story goes that at a carnival in the 1970s, visitors passed by a creepy mannequin in a funhouse, believing it to be just another spooky decoration. They interacted with it, took photos, and went on their way, unaware that they were actually touching a real human corpse. The truth behind this eerie legend involves Elmer McCurdy, a man who was killed during a failed train robbery in 1911 in Oklahoma. After he was shot, his body remained unclaimed, and no one came forward to take responsibility for it. In the absence of claimants, McCurdy's body was embalmed with arsenic by a local funeral home to preserve it. Since there were no strict laws regulating the handling of human remains at the time, the funeral home sold McCurdy's body to a traveling carnival. This practice of displaying human bodies for public exhibition was somewhat common back then, and McCurdy's remains were put on display at various carnivals across the U.S. It wasn't until 1976, when McCurdy's body was being used as a prop in a funhouse at Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California, that the truth was uncovered. During the filming of The $6 Million Man, the body was moved, and the decomposing remains began to fall apart. A crew member, noticing how lifelike the body seemed, decided to investigate. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that this wasn't a mannequin at all. It was a preserved human corpse. After confirming McCurdy's identity, the mummified remains were finally returned to his family and given a proper burial. Body inside the wall. In 2011, construction workers at the Abbeville National Bank in Louisiana made a shocking discovery while renovating the building. As they began knocking down an old wall, they expected to find only dust and debris. But instead, they uncovered a bare-bones skeleton, staring out from the darkness. The bones were later identified as belonging to Joseph Schexnayder, a man who had been missing for 27 years. Joseph Schexnayder was a familiar face in Abbeville, Louisiana, a tight-knit community. His disappearance in 1984 shocked his family and the town. At the time, he was being investigated for car theft, and when he vanished without a trace, people thought he had simply run away or gone into hiding to avoid legal trouble. The police continued to search for him, but the case grew cold, and no one could find any sign of Joseph. It wasn't until 2011 that the mystery was solved. According to reports, it was believed that Joseph had tried to break into the bank back in 1984. The theory was that he attempted to enter the building through the chimney, but something went terribly wrong. He likely got stuck and couldn't escape, eventually dying inside the chimney. Joseph Schexnayder's tragic story ended with his remains being properly identified and eventually returned to his family for a respectful burial. The old woman buried alive. In this urban legend, the story is about an old woman who is buried after being declared dead by her family and doctors. Everything seems to go as planned. She's pronounced dead, her funeral is held, and she is laid to rest. But then, days later, when her family visits her grave, they make a terrifying discovery. The coffin lid is scratched, as if someone was trying to escape. There are other signs too, like the body being shifted in a way that suggests movement, or signs that the woman tried to break free. Back in the 1800s, medical knowledge wasn't as advanced as it is today. There were no tools like heart monitors or brain scans to detect life accurately. Doctors often used simpler methods to confirm death, like checking for a pulse or breathing. But there was a big problem with this. In many cases, symptoms of death, like a weak pulse, low body temperature, or unconsciousness, were similar to a deep coma or suspended animation. These people sometimes appeared dead, but they were still alive. The fear of being buried alive was very real in the 19th century, leading to disturbing solutions. Safety coffins were invented to stop premature burials. These coffins had bells. If the person woke up in the grave, they could ring the bell or use a lever to signal for help. The quietly dead guy. The quietly dead guy is a disturbing urban legend that starts with a man who seems to be passed out on a bus. Passengers and the bus driver think he is just sleeping, so they leave him alone. However, when the bus driver checks on him at the end of his shift, they realize with horror that the man has been dead the entire time. The real story behind this myth happened in 2011. Robert Young and Mark Robinson went to their friend Jeffrey Jarrett's house one evening and found him passed out. They thought he was just drunk from a night of partying. Instead of getting him medical help or trying to wake him up, they decided to load him into their car and go out. They took Jeffrey's body with them, believing he was just really drunk. For the rest of the night, they went to bars and partied, with Jeffrey still lying in the back seat of their car. They even used his money and credit cards, thinking he was too drunk to wake up. But in reality, Jeffrey Jarrett was already dead. He had died from a drug overdose before his friends even moved him into the car. Later, Robert Young and Mark Robinson were charged with identity theft and credit card fraud for using Jeffrey's cards. Calls from the dead. The story often involves a person receiving multiple phone calls from a family member who has already passed away. The chilling part of this legend is that the calls happen after the person's death, and the people receiving the calls only realize this once it's too late. This urban legend became a real mystery on September 12, 2008, when a tragic train crash in California killed 25 people, including Charles Peck. After the crash, Charles's family started receiving missed calls from his cell phone. At first, they thought it was a mistake or some glitch. But as time passed, they realized the calls weren't accidents. Charles's phone called his family members 35 times after his death. Some family members thought Charles was trying to contact them from beyond the grave to say something or leave a final message. However, when they answered the calls, they only heard silence on the other end, no voice or sound. This left the family confused and unsettled. A more practical explanation is that the calls were caused by a technical malfunction. It's possible that Charles's phone was damaged in the crash and was dialing his family automatically. Green Man. The Green Man is a mysterious figure said to haunt the rural roads of Beaver County, Pennsylvania. He is described as having a glowing green face, giving him an eerie and supernatural look. Over time, the legend of the Green Man became a well-known part of local folklore. However, this legend has a real and tragic origin. Raymond Robinson was an ordinary child who grew up in Pennsylvania, but his life changed when he was 8 years old. One day, he was playing near a power line and accidentally touched it. The electrical shock from the high-voltage power line caused severe burns, leaving him with serious injuries. His face, eyes, nose, and one arm were badly disfigured from the burns. His face, often described as having a greenish hue in certain lights, led to the legend of his glowing green face. Robinson spent time outdoors and often walked along the rural roads at night. He enjoyed these quiet walks and would sometimes pass by curious teenagers or townspeople. The Green Man's legend grew as people began sharing stories of seeing him walk at night, and these stories became a part of the town's folklore. The dead body under the mattress. This urban legend sounds horrifyingly fictional, but has, in fact, happened more than once. The story usually goes like this. A motel guest checks into a room and notices a foul, unpleasant smell. They think it's just a minor issue, maybe a plumbing problem, but over time, the smell gets worse. After complaining to the management, housekeeping investigates and finds something far worse than anyone could imagine: a decomposing body hidden inside the bed, specifically in the box spring beneath the mattress. This urban legend became a reality in 1999 at the Ocean View Motel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Guests in room 112 started complaining about a strong, sickening odor. Eventually, the motel management decided to investigate. After a thorough search, they made a gruesome discovery. The decomposing body of Saul Hernandez was found hidden inside the box spring of the bed. The body had been there for several days, and guests had unknowingly slept above it. It turned out that Saul Hernandez had been murdered, and his body was hidden by a killer who somehow managed to stash the remains inside the bed without anyone noticing for days. The incident at the Ocean View Motel is one of the most well-known real-life examples of this urban legend coming true. The Phantom Truck Driver. The story is about a mysterious truck driver who appears on the highway, driving aggressively and tailgating other vehicles. The truck seems to chase down victims, sometimes following them for miles, only to suddenly disappear without a trace. The truck and driver vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving the victim confused and scared. Over the years, many drivers have reported seeing the Phantom Truck Driver. The truck is usually described as a large, heavy-duty vehicle with bright, unusual lights that stand out from other vehicles on the road. In 1988, a trucker was seen driving aggressively, tailgating several vehicles, and causing multiple accidents on the highway. Despite many efforts by the authorities to find the truck or identify the driver, the trucker was never found or identified. Some people believe the truck driver might be a restless spirit, wandering the highways forever in search of something or someone. The Vampire of Highgate Cemetery. The Vampire of Highgate Cemetery is a legend that emerged in the 1970s, where residents of London reported strange sightings of a tall, dark figure who would appear in the cemetery at night. Some claimed it was a vampire, while others believed it was a ghost of a former resident. In reality, Highgate Cemetery was the scene of bizarre events. In the 1960s and 1970s, there were reports of sightings of a dark figure that many believed was a supernatural entity. Some even claimed to have seen blood draining from the tombs. Investigators later found signs of ritualistic activity in the cemetery and several individuals claim to have had disturbing encounters with a vampire. The phenomenon remains unexplained, but continues to add to the mystery surrounding the cemetery. Whether it was the manifestation of something supernatural or just a collection of eerie coincidences, the vampire of Highgate Cemetery remains one of London's most chilling urban legends. The Killer Clown. The Killer Clown legend emerged in the 1980s and involved a clown who was secretly a killer, hiding under the guise of innocence. The idea of a murderous clown became even more terrifying with the story of John Wayne Gacy, who performed as Pogo the Clown at children's parties. John Wayne Gacy was a real-life serial killer who lured young men and boys to his home, where he sexually assaulted and murdered them. He performed as a clown at charity events, which only added to the terrifying nature of his crimes. Gacy was eventually arrested, and his story became one of the most chilling real-life connections to the Killer Clown legend. His ability to disguise himself as a friendly, fun-loving clown made the horror even more disturbing, and his crimes remain a haunting reminder of the true horror behind the clown mask.